the lower limbs. And we have this piece, and then we have muscles of the face, and that's all we have left from this chapter. We have a test scheduled for Thursday next week. So rather than giving you additional homework, you already have the chapter 6 review posted. You may have started that at some point. But if not, you can start it now. And then that is what we'll do. That is due on Monday, okay? So you want to be able to get those back and see any errors before your test. So you definitely want to get that in. So Monday we'll do muscles of the face, today muscles of the legs. Wednesday, I'm going to make myself available for like review. If you want to pop in for a little review session or you have questions, it doesn't have to be like a formal class, but I thought we could go over concepts Wednesday before your test Thursday. So that's a good thing about a Thursday test. Okay, anybody have questions on the agenda or the goings-ons? Okay, so I believe I have a student version in the Google World for you. Again, you can fill that out, don't fill it out, that's up to you. You might go back to it after the fact, see if you can fill it out, or when you're reviewing for your test, see if you can fill it out. In that sense, it could serve as a review rather than as something to keep track of. I like to use the speaker notes down below, not when I'm talking, but like if I were a student, any additional information that I might want to take as notes, if you're doing digital, you could pop them in there. I know a lot of people take handwritten notes, but don't forget these are there and you can always come back and revisit them at your leisure. Hey, there was an objective slide. Where did it go? I bet I put the objective slide on the student version and not on my version. So like the other muscles, we want you to know the origin insertion, right? We want to be able to recognize actions. And we talked about how we don't necessarily have to memorize that. If we can picture the insertion moving toward the origin, we can figure out the action and then be able to label. This is my favorite test to observe when you're in the classroom because kids are like trying to figure out actions and they're moving their body parts. It's kind of fun. So we will start with Gluteus Maximus. So remember lat snore, R was for relative size. So in a group of muscles, a comparison of some sort. So you have a Gluteus Maximus, medius, and minimus. So you should be able to figure out the medius is kind of in between and the minimus is the smallest. The maximus is the one you're probably most familiar with. Also because it's superficial, it's on the outer layer. So this is an R for lat snore. So you can see that it's originating here from the iliac crest, kind of the medial portion, all along the sacrum and through the coccyx. The insertion is over here on the femur. And it's on the lateral side of the femur, which that becomes important because I might do a little bit. When you're move the insertion, oh, sorry, that's my finger. The insertion towards the origin, you want to picture like you're pulling from the thigh to the center, right? So when I pull that string, it brings my leg out, right? So you guys do that when you're reviewing your notes. Try to picture a string from the insertion to the origin and like literally pull on the insertion and see what happens to your body, or do it to a friend and pull on that insertion towards the origin and see what happens to the body. So you'll be able to reason out the actions in that way. Okay, so the insertion is on the femur, and when we pull on that, you're pulling from a superior position, so it's going to move it up. And then also that angular is going to cause a rotation because the fibers are running angularly, and this is pulling towards your midline from behind. So it creates a rotation of the thigh, a lateral rotation, rotates it outward and extends the thigh behind you. Okay. The medius is underneath that one. This is one of those deep muscles, and you can usually feel it when you've done a lot of exercise. So you can see that this one does not run all the way up to the iliac crest, but more kind of in the middle of the ilium, and then it's running out to the greater trochanter of the femur. So we're starting to get used to those words, tuberosities. They're like bumps, right? A trochanter is a bigger bump. And you can see that right here, the greater trochanter. So when I pull on that trochanter, it's pulling it up and towards the mid, right? So that's going to extend the leg, but it's also going to bring the leg outward. So that's what I was demonstrating before. That's an abduction. It's moving the leg away from the midline. So if you were thinking of doing jumping jacks, the medius is your main abductor. So again, you have a rotation because of that angular direction of the fiber. Any questions on the glutes? So we're not going to do the minimus. Gracilis, so you can think groin, gracilis, right? They both start GR. So this is a skinny little strip down the midline of your leg, from the pubic bone down to your tibia. So when you're stretching, you know, if you're in sports at all, you do kind of a split-legged stretch, and you might lean side to side, and you really feel that up high on the inside of your thigh towards the pubic bone. So that's this right here. It's actually like a flat sheet of muscle if you were to dissect and actually look at the muscle. So again, pull on that insertion toward the origin. It's going to bring it in toward the middle, right? The medius was connecting outward. This is connecting inward. So this is like an antagonist to the medius. So this would bring the leg in towards the middle. So that's an adduction. And also a medial rotation, because this time we're pulling it to the middle in the front. If we were pulling it to the back, it would be lateral rotation. Pulling it to front would be. You good with the gracilis? So this is an Sartorius runs diagonally across the front of your leg. So notice it is originating on the ilium. It's crossing the hip, so it's going to affect the hip. It's crossing the knee, so it's going to affect the knee. So remember, a muscle will affect the joint it crosses. The origin is usually above it, the insertion usually below it. So we're originating again on the iliac spine, or I'm sorry, iliac crest, a little bit lower down, going diagonally, crossing the knee and connecting on the tibia. So when you pull on the tibia and you're pulling it towards your hip, it's going to bring your knee up and out. This, for me, I don't know why I think of a scarecrow. If you were sitting cross-legged, we used to call it Indian style. Do we just call it cross-legged now? How do we call it? Pretzel? Do you know what I'm saying? Like when you're a kid and you're sitting on the carpet? Yeah. So that would be the action of this muscle. So it brings the knee up and out. So that's a flexion at the hip, a lateral rotation, and an abduction of the thigh, because it's taking the thigh away from the midline. That's all the front. Those were all front muscles. This one is on the posterior, so the bicep. I should do quadriceps next because that's also anterior. So there's a group of muscles that are considered hamstrings. You have the biceps femoris, semimembranous, semitendinosus. They're all hamstrings. And they got their name from, like, these are the muscles that they hang the pigs from, the ham hocks, after they've butchered. So that's where the name hamstring came from. Okay. Biceps, number of origins, right? It tells me there's 2 points of origins. And I can see up here, this is my bicep femoris that I'm talking about now. You can feel it most obviously behind your knee on the lateral side. Also, like on your fibula, you'll be able to feel that insertion. So the 2 points of origin, one is on the ischial tuberosity and one is on the femur. I completely tore my muscle off of the ischial tuberosity. They had to screw it back on. That's my lovely story about the biceps femoris. It inserts on the lateral side of our tibia and fibula. Okay, so when this pulls, it's going to pull because it's a posterior muscle, so it's going to pull from behind, right? It's difficult. I can't get good enough views. It's going to pull from behind, so it's pulling the leg behind you. That is an extension of the thigh or hip, but also it's crossing this knee joint, so it's going to bend that knee and bring your heel towards your butt. So here we see a straight leg, and then she's going to use her biceps femoris to pull. Like when she pulls on that, it brings this part of the leg toward her backside. So that creates the bending of the knee. So flexion of the knee and a lateral rotation of the leg. Anytime you have a diagonal, there's going to be some sort of rotation. Good so far? Quadriceps, you're used to just referring to them as the quads, 4 points of origins. We are going to name each of those muscles. So probably our most powerful muscle, definitely the most powerful of our legs. And we probably are most familiar with it when kicking or standing from like a squatted position. So very powerful, like extension of the knee. So a forward, that would be your kicking motion. So the 4 points of the quadriceps, we have rectus femoris. So remember, direction of fibers. Rectus means straight up and down. You have the lateral and medial, the vastus lateralis, vastus medialis. So you can see this most prominently at the knee if you have well-defined muscles. Lateral on the lateral side, medial on the medial side. Underneath all of this, you have one in between the two, and it's called the vastus intermedius. So you'd have to actually cut away to see that muscle. So we can see the rectus femoris is originating on your hip. The vastus muscles are all originating on your femur. So the rectus femoris crosses the hip joint. It's going to affect the hip joint. So it's going to have a flexion of the hip. It's crossing the knee joint, and it's crossing it from in front. So when it pulls on that shin, it's going to create an extension of the knee. It's going to straighten it out. And we can see they all insert through tendons surrounding the patella. So quadriceps femoris here, all 4 of these muscles together. When he goes to stand up, he's going to extend his knee. He's going to straighten his knee. And that's going to be those muscles working together. Tibialis anterior, so this is location. It's on the tibia and it's on the front. You also have a tibialis posterior, one in the back. We're just going to do the tibialis anterior. We can see it's crossing the leg, so it's going to create some sort of rotation, right? So it starts on the lateral condyle of the tibia. Remember, condyle knuckle-like projections, that was like the cap of the knee, or the cap of the tibia. So then it comes down and it goes to the first metatarsal, which is the middle part of the foot leading to the big toe. So when this pulls on that first metatarsal, it's going to create a flexion. It's bringing the toes back towards your nose. So that is called a dorsal flexion because it's going backwards. It's also, because it's diagonal here, when it pulls on, so it's pulling on the first metatarsal from the lateral. So when it does that, it creates an inversion of the foot. The soles of the foot go in. If they went out, that would be an eversion, but they're going in, and that's an inversion. So it dorsiflexes and inverts the foot. On the backside, we have 2 muscles we'll name, and then we'll be done. The gastrocnemius and the soleus. They are synergistic, meaning they work together. So we learned the antagonistic, they do opposites. These are synergistic, so they do the same. So the gastroc is your primary mover when pointing the toe. It is the one most prominent when like standing on your toes. It's the bulkiest of the muscles in your calf. Okay, we can see 2 bellies of 2 heads of the gastrocnemius here. So it's going to insert through the Achilles tendon of the calcaneus, the heel bone. And when I pull on that heel bone, it's going to bring the toes downward as the heel goes upward, right? So that's the pointing of the toe. So again, you guys try to pull on these different parts of your body and see how they work. Move them towards the origin. That's the best way to internalize it. This is called a plantar flexion. So if you pull your toes back to, remember backside is dorsal. That's dorsiflexion. If you point, P and P, that's a plantar flexion. The bottom of your foot is plantar. So putting your toes towards the bottom is a plantar flexion. Along with that, deeper than the gastroc, here's your gastroc, soleus you see as a V on either side. So further down, distal to that, we're going to see the soleus extending below the belly of the gastroc. So it originates on the backside of the tibia and fibula, and then it's also going to insert through that Achilles tendon on the calcaneus. So when I pull that tendon, it's going to cause me to point my toes or to stand on my toes. Dancers are probably really quite familiar with their gastrocs and their soleus because they point their toes a lot. So also an inversion of the foot at the ankle. Okay. What questions can I clear up on the muscles of the lower limbs? The slides I added, I realized I only added to the student version. So I have a couple practice slides for you guys. So just pointing out our new words, right? So let's see if you can label. Can you guys just take a minute to label? We'll check those and then you can do the rest on your own. So at the end of this, you can never get a graphic that is exactly what you want. You just kind of do the best you can. But still a couple of people getting not understanding what I want for the lat snore. I want the name of a muscle. This is not a description. So your answer should not be on the front. They run straight to kind of big. They should be actual muscle names. So some of us are still struggling with that. So take a couple minutes, see if you can figure out. Ooh, I meant to delete number 1. You guys can skip number 1. I didn't mean to do that one. We kind of ran out of extra days for quizzing labels. We could do a quiz on Monday if you wanted. We could do one Wednesday if you wanted. I could add it to your test on Thursday. That'll make the test a little bit longer. 32 I don't mean to have. Would that be too quick if I started calling on people? What do you think, Maggie? Can you give me number 2, this diagonal?
Is that the Sartorius?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Okay. I meant to delete number 1. On the front of your leg, you have your quads. So 3, 5, and 14 are all parts of the quad. Number 3 would be rectus femoris, the one that goes straight up and down. It's the most prominent muscle probably on your thigh. How about number 5? Abby, could you help me with number 5?
Is it the vastus lateralis?
Yes, lateralis. Yep, because it's on the lateral side. So if 5 is lateralis, which I didn't spell right, Bree, can you make a guess of number 14?
Would that be the vastus medialis?
Yes, it is. Vastus medialis. Danny, how about number 12? Do you got that one?
Gracilis.
Yes, it is. And number 7, how about Christina? Do you have number 7?
Isn't it the I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly, the Tibialis or Tibialis Anterior?
Yep, Tibialis Anterior. Okay, so we got all of those from the front. We've already done Biceps Femoris. How about this big one here, Caleb? Number 26.
Oh, that is the glutes.
Which one, though?
The Maximus.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we usually refer to just glutes because we're probably exercising all 3 at the same time. Number 23. How about honesty?
I do not know how to pronounce that. That's the Gastrocnemius muscle.
So gastrocnemius. Yeah, I was trying to pick somebody I thought might be able to say that one. How about Zach? How about number 30? Do you got that one underneath the gastroc? What do you have?
Is that the soleus?
It is soleus. Yes. Okay.
Hey, yes.
Very good. So you guys got that. So if you want, you can go ahead and take off. If you want to keep going with me, we can keep going. Monday, we got our reviews due. There is an FRQ on this test, not an FRQ, but I always give a short answer where I ask you to name a muscle according to each of the letters of lat snore. So these slides have been practiced for that particular essay. It's not really an essay, it's just a listing. But from this chapter, or this section, give you a second to write some down. I got some in my head. What muscle is named for where it's found? What do you think, Addie?
The Tibialis Anterior.
Yeah, that's a good one because it names both the bone it's over and its like surface of the body, Tibialis Anterior. So I think we only named one direction of fiber today. Remember our directions were transverse, oblique, rectus. So I think we only named one muscle that would be a direction. Veronica, do you got a muscle in mind?
For direction?
Yes.
I wasn't actually doing that, but hold on.
Okay, that's fine. I don't mean to call on you guys when you haven't done it. I was looking at the faces and it looked like you were just waiting for me. So I was like, okay, I'll keep going.
Is the vastus lateralis one or no?
I don't think so. I think the vastus has to do with where it's connecting on the femur. But in that same area, that same group, you have a rectus femoris. I forgot, we also have orbicularis, but that's not one of them. Number of origin, this is going to be an easy one. Liv.
The Quadriceps Femoris.
Wait, sorry. So what was the answer of the fiber one?
Rectus femoris? Oh, am I not sharing? Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, you are, but I have you like really small.
No, you're fine. The only one that I think we named in this lecture was the rectus femoris. And number of origins, you have biceps femoris or quadriceps femoris. And then we only named one relative size. Rafi. Do you know?
Gluteus Maximus.
I guess we named two because there was the maximus and the medius. Yeah. So dorsiflexion and plant, these all have to do with ankle moves. So which direction is the ankle moving? Or you can refer to the toes or the sole of the foot. So Abby, do you have dorsiflexion?
Yeah, I said it inverts foot to like the ankle. So it's like lifting up.
So be careful with invert here. So it is, you're right. It's bringing the toes back towards your backside. I think toes, nose. Because inversion is more with the sole. So bringing the sole to the midline is inversion. Bringing the sole laterally is an eversion.
Okay.
Pointing the toes, plantar flexion, pulling the toes, dorsiflexion. Draw the toes back toward blah, blah, chat box. Back towards your shin. And I added some multiple choice questions this time. We got 7 of them. You could highlight your correct answer. So those words, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, and inversion got used in these first 2 questions. Are you guys doing pictures or did you go to the multiple choice?
The first one be plantar flexation.
The gas, yep, yep.
Okay.
Very good.
Is it how do you say that?
Flexion,
Flexion. Oh, yeah, I was way off. Okay.
like a T-I-O-N sound.
Okay, gotcha.
So these are antagonistic. So if this is a plantar flexion, it kind of limits us to a 50-50 over here. So now is my sole going towards the midline or to the outside? You're pulling on your big toe. So that's going to fold your paw, or the sole of your foot inward. So the tibialis is a dorsal flexion and an inversion. Anybody have any ideas on the second or third? Go ahead and shout it out.
All the above.
Yes. The glutes extend the thigh, laterally rotate, and take it away from the midline. So it's an abduction because it's a pretty big muscle, so it can do a lot. And then it's covering a diagonal motion or action, a diagonal on the joint. So it does a lot with the joint. So the hamstring is on the back side.
Would that one be adduct?
It is not an adduction. The midline, like muscles towards the midline are going to be adductors, more towards the gracilis, not the middle of the leg, but the middle of the body. So this is, what am I doing? Hamstrings. So can you see me? So when I pull my hamstring, it's pulling on my fibula right there. So it brings my foot towards my butt. So that's going to be a flexion. And then we already did that one. And then, okay, so that gives you some practice of the kind of questions you would see on a test. So you're kind of thinking about, I think on the test, if you picture the muscle man, I think it helps you think of actions. So it's not memorized because it's a lot to memorize. But if you can see in your head, in your mind's eye, where that muscle is, you're able to like draw the insertion towards the origin, and that will create your movement. So if you think about that. Okay. You have any questions for me? All right, so then you should just have the 3 pictures to put in of those actions, and then that sheet should be done. And then the review over the weekend, and then we'll test on Thursday.
Wait, what are I'm having trouble with, like, there's 3 more questions. I'm having trouble with 2 of them.
Okay, did I skip a page? Okay, so that's when I thought there was a second slide, and then I looked and I was like, oh, so I was thinking I already did them. I don't know why, because I didn't read them. Yeah, sure. Okay, so adductors, we know are going to be adducting, right? So we are limiting our answers to B and D, if you will. So if it's a medial adductor, it's pulling towards the midline. The muscle is going to be found in the mid of your body. So it's pulling things inward. So that creates a medial rotation. It would have to be a lateral muscle in order for it to roll something outward. So it's not going to be a lateral rotation. It'll be a medial rotation. Sorry about that. The quadriceps cross both the hip and the knee, right? So when it crosses the hip, it pulls the hip up. So that's a flexion of the hip, but it's also crossing the knee, but it's pulling like this. Can you see? So it straightens the knee when it pulls. I knew I should have went and put running pants on. And then the origin, so Sartorius is that diagonal one across the leg. So I know it's coming from the superior iliac. So that's going to narrow my choices to A and C, if they had letters. And that's that up and out one. So it pulls it like this, up and out. If you can see, up and out. That's going to be the Sartorius. So we got a flexion of the hip, a lateral rotation because the muscle is found on the outside, it rotates laterally. If it was on the inside, it would rotate medially. So it rotates laterally, and it was anterior, and it flexes. So it's
Wait, what was that second one? The one about the quadricep? Did you say the last one?
the quadricep is going to flex the thigh. So the first one is, what is it doing to the thigh joint? It's bringing your knee up, so it's going to create a smaller angle at your thigh. So it flexes the thigh, and it extends the leg. So that's going to be A.
And then the last one's D, you said?
I think so. Iliac, a flexion, and an abduction. Oh, I thought I had a lateral rotation, but that wasn't a choice.
Is it C?
Let me read. Oh, yeah, because not inferior, superior. So we're limited to A and C. And it's on the lateral side, so it's a lateral rotation. Yep. So in that case, it's C. I would also say abduct, but that wasn't in the choice. The only one we talked about today was the rectus femoris.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Bye, Miss Snug.
Hi, hon.